Well, hi, this is Russ Reed, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Center for the Biotechnology Workforce. And I have with me today Sean Killebrew, our technician galore. Thanks, Sean. How you doing?
Doing fantastic, Russ. Always great to be here.
Sean, this is the first of the new year. We have a really special guest. So I want to welcome Dr. Donald deBethizy to SciTech. Now, this is not Dr. deBethizy's first go at SciTech. In fact, Don and I were just talking that he'd actually appeared at Forsyth Tech 12 years ago. Don, welcome to SciTech.
Thank you, Russ. It's a pleasure to be here. And Sean, it's nice to meet you today.
Don, you're no stranger to us at Forsyth Technical Community College, but I've known you for over 20 years, and I knew you as a CEO of a company here in Winston-Salem. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself for our faculty, staff, and students?
Well, and as I said, it's great to see you guys, and it's really great to be back and being around for SciTech. I loved working with Forsyth Tech, and Gary Green was president then, and I know things are just blooming, continuing to bloom there. And we had a lot of energy back then around the start of the biotech cluster, and our company Targacep was one of the catalysts, and so it's just a pleasure to see how much development that's happened. But how I ended up in Winston-Salem was I had done my postdoctoral fellowship in pharmacology and toxicology in Research Triangle Park, actually, at the Chemical Industries Institute of Toxicology, and I got recruited to a chemical company in Pennsylvania. So that's where I started. And then my boss, who was the top toxicologist in the world, came out of academia, got hired 18 months later to start a safer cigarette program, a serious one at RJ Company. So I came down in 1985 with my young family and left to move to Copenhagen in Denmark in 2012. But this transition to Reynolds Tobacco was an important one because I became head of research and an officer of Reynolds Tobacco, actually, because even though I love science and I was at the bench for a long time, but my talent is really with people and ideas and getting people to believe in important things. So I ended up working with our research team that I've been part of around the nicotinic receptors. We decided that it was best if we took it out as a biotech company. So we did one of the top spinouts ever from a big corporation. It was written up in the Harvard Business Review, in fact, and in 2002 as the best corporate practice for a spinout. I have to really congratulate RJ Reynolds for being open-minded and facilitating that. But Targacep was formed in 2000, and we took the company from a private company, venture-backed, to a public company on the U.S. NASDAQ. We actually reached $1 billion market cap at one point, right down there in Winston-Salem, as a result of a very successful phase 2 trial in depression with one of our novel compounds. We ended up licensing it to AstraZeneca. Long story short, they ran 5 clinical trials to get 2 positive, and they ended up getting a huge placebo effect. And when you do that in a trial, it's impossible to know whether your drug works or not. I raised 2 kids with my first wife in Winston-Salem. They're doing very well. I have to say their education, the areas just was fantastic for us as a family. And now I'm living and been in Copenhagen for 10 years. And it's been quite a ride, I have to say, transitioning from a big company with big problems to a small company with big problems. All small companies are challenging. And I have to say that Dr. Gary Green, Russ Reed, Russ Reed was, as we've talked about, we've known each other 20 years. We were in the early heyday of this development of this sector, and it was just so much fun. And And I have to say that Forsyth Tech has done a remarkable job. I have one little anecdote. So I'm on the board. Barack Obama comes. We're in the front row, right up against, because we're on the board. My then girlfriend from Copenhagen is standing next to me, and she says, "Don, I don't really need to shake his hand. Do you want me to video it?" And so he comes walking by, shaking the hands of the board members. I reach out, and you can tell the way I am. I like to engage with people. So I engaged with him and said, we hired the first technician developed at in Targacept, and the security, the Secret Service, they all leaned into me because I didn't realize it, but I was holding his hand a little bit. He pulled back. Camilla has it on film. He walks around the corner and then he yells back, "Hire some more."
That's a great story.
So that's how significant Dr. Green, the whole team at Forsyth Tech, that's the level at which they had envisioned this program, these programs at Forsyth Tech, and the execution has been flawless over many years.
That's great. Don, thank you for that answer. I really appreciate it. And could you tell us a little bit about your association with Argenx?
Sure. Argenx is a great example of one of the companies. So when I first got over here, I'd start all over again. I was blessed with, having a severance, so I had a little bit of time, where I could find myself over here. But I got hired as CEO of a biotech company, an RNA company. They wanted to go public on the U.S. NASDAQ. They were looking for a CEO in the U.S. that had public NASDAQ experience. And they called a friend of mine. He said, "Well, you have one living in Copenhagen." So within 3 months, we were filed to go public. We were using the Jobs Act to test the waters confidentially. I asked Roche, our new partner, to invest $10 million in the IPO, because when you're a little company coming from Denmark, trying to get listed on the big NASDAQ in the US, thought we needed some money. And they came back a week later and said, "Would you sell the company?" I said, "It's a $500 million company on the US stock market. You got to think that way." They ended up buying it for $450 million. And they put me on the boards, and they put me on the Argenx board to coach the young CEO, Flemish Belgian, who had just gone public on the Euronext, and they wanted somebody with public experience. So I have been on there 8 years now. We were a 250 million euro market cap company when I joined. We're now a $22 billion US NASDAQ listed company. So it's a good example of transitioning. And I have to say that my Americanness is important. You tend to want to fit in, right? So, and in Europe, people are wise. They on these boards, they don't say much. They certainly don't talk as much as I do. And they and then they say something really important every once in a while. I started to kind of like succumb to that, because I wanted to fit in like people do. But in the end, I realized my talkativeness, and it's a big joke over here, particularly in Denmark. Americans are so friendly, people can't believe it. We raised a lot more money, I think, than the Europeans would have allowed us to. Only because they're more careful.
You had mentioned to us that you'd ran a research division, you'd ran a lab. You told us a story when we were off air about your advisor, and that was great. And so, we're about students, and we're about success. And you'll be very happy to know that we had a wonderful transition from Gary Green to Dr. Janet Spriggs. And Dr. Spriggs has really taken the college to a new level. So if you can imagine that Gary took it to a level, Janet Spriggs has taken it to a new level. So one of the things that we really like to do, Don, is we like to make sure that we understand what are those skills that people need in the lab, technical workers. You know these people extremely well. You sit on boards of companies, you hear about perhaps personnel or people issues. we know that especially when people are investing in small companies, that every milestone counts. Tell us about these skills from your vantage point.
I became a lab technician and learned a lot, and it was a lot of National Cancer Institute grants, a lot of animal work. I did a lot of animal care and a lot of surgery, all kinds of skills that I learned, right? Hand skills, and I was going to be a car mechanic, so my dad was a house painter, so I had hand skills, right? And so I think, and that gave me the basis of being so interested in Forsyth Tech, actually, and the program that's there, because I know what it's like. And as I mentioned earlier in our setup, I ended up working as a lab technician in Salt Lake City, Utah, for a young professor, and that's how I ended up going to graduate school. And I have to say to everyone, this skill development, these efforts that you make, and it doesn't matter what level you're doing at, it's all important work. And the skills include these digital and computational and statistical skills. And what's important today and looking to 2030 is the role that they play in big data and the role that they play in artificial intelligence. Because what's happening now is people are really taking big data sets and trying to extract more information out of them. And then, of course, leadership skills and communication skills. And you don't realize that when you're in the lab, but you can always be a leader. You have fresh eyes whenever you take a new job. And those fresh eyes can see what's wrong. There's always something wrong. And I did that in Targacep. I told everyone. I got them within the first month. I made sure every employee saw me. I said, look, you got about 6 months to see us with fresh eyes. And then the other skills are the translation of the science into development and into commercialization. So those commercialization skills are key. And then, of course, along with that, the ability to keep them up to date. I think that's something. Things are moving so fast. I think the cross training and disciplinary work. I mean, you really need to make sure that you're looking at disciplines across the board and making sure your skills are transferable. Because with biotech companies particularly, but in any, something can run out of favor. They're running out of favor faster now than they used to. So it's not like when I first joined Reynolds Tobacco, you'd have a job for 35 years and the technology would be essentially, it's not completely the same, but they weren't these transformational events. And then there's these. I think the other part that's really, especially being around Argenix, the sales and marketing skills are in life sciences. They're very unique and they're quite different. Personalities and the attraction is different, but it allows, when you get this training that you have, don't forget you could be working on the commercial side. And I think people who go to a technical community college know about continuing professional development. That's essentially why they're there. And I think you have to recognize this goes back to the fact that the world is changing quickly.
One of the things, you being in Europe now, are these universal skills?
Absolutely. Europe, when I got there, I was really struck by the technical competency over here in Denmark. The skills were strong. They were transferable. They were from different countries. Remember, if you go, 150 kilometers from here, you're in Germany, right? And so it's a completely different culture, completely different. So the trend and people who work in companies here in life sciences, they'll often live in their home country and commute and work from home and commute. So I think it's important for people to recognize that the skills are definitely transferable, and there are opportunities over here for Americans.
Well, Don, it's been fascinating hearing about your experience and working in America and in Europe. Can you tell us about your transition to working in Europe?
Yeah, Sean, it's a good question. I was blessed to have a Danish wife, right? That helps, and who speaks perfect English, of course. And now I have these two little boys who are guiding me all the time. As you can imagine, they're 9 years old and 12 years old, and they know everything. And but when I first got here, I didn't have them, and so my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, was worried that I would be lonely here because the Danes seem cool. They don't seem that friendly. But I quickly realized that Danes are very friendly, but they're busy, right? Because it's a small country, they're close to a close group of friends, they have a family, they do family things, and they work, right? So that makes them very disciplined and busy. You just have to break through that. And I networked into Novo Holdings. So there's Novo Nordisk, and then a big diabetes and weight control company, one of the largest in the world, and Novozymes, which is an industrial enzyme company using yeast to make a variety of proteins that are useful in industry. And those two companies are 70% owned by the Novo Foundation. So that was, when you have a successful business, that they decided that rather than having it bought out, this creates an environment where there's money. They invest the money, the profits from these companies, and the foundation also has a lot of charitable work or development, like development of the life sciences. And now they're focused on the development of women in life sciences. It's a big diversity effort, and I've just been asked to give a talk about, because people have heard how much I've been emphasizing getting women onto boards, and so I think my experience in Europe was that it's quite different. The cultural and a lot of times things that you ascribe to somebody's personality in Europe is actually related to their culture. When you build companies over here and you start to integrate into companies, it really helps if you read a book about cultural differences, or at least recognize that it's not like in America. It may seem like when you go to Arkansas or somewhere like that it's quite different, but it's not. I mean, it's still America, right?
You had talked about some opportunities for Americans in Europe. What kind of opportunities are there for students to study in Europe?
Well, there's a remarkable number of opportunities. We have the Danish Technical University here called DTU. It's Europe. It's a very good institution. Lots of biotech going on there, all kinds of technology. We have Copenhagen University, which is where my wife was getting her degree, her PhD in medicinal chemistry, when she did an internship at Targesep, actually. And so there's lots of exchanges like that, and you can go online and find them. But I know from my wife and her younger sister that there's a lot of funding here, and for development. Getting a degree in life sciences, if you're business oriented, coming here and doing a CBS degree would be an incredible opportunity, I think, to broaden your view of the world.
Sounds like a fantastic opportunity.
You probably want to know about a little bit is, how's biotech doing?
Yeah. How is it?
Yeah. So you probably, sitting on boards of companies, probably know this far better than anybody, but North Carolina just had a great year. It had a fabulous year. And, we're becoming a bit of a cell and gene therapy hub. Probably our biggest issue, Don, is we don't have enough people. Honestly, we need to be able to train people, and that's why community colleges are so important to get those technical trainees. So, with the advent of having so many companies have chosen North Carolina, it's a great opportunity. And you're thinking, well, we know that RTP is a hot area, and the East is a hot area. What about the Triad? Well, the Triad is a hot area, and you remember Dr. Anthony Atala and WFIRM, the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. So that is becoming a regional hub now. Regenerative medicine there's a lot of activity with Greater Winston-Salem Inc., which you used to know as the Chamber, working very hard in tandem with the North Carolina Biotechnology Center, and it's a movement.
Fantastic. And is Doug Edgerton still the president and CEO of the North Carolina Biotech Center?
Doug Edgerton is indeed the president of the North Carolina Biotechnology
I figured he still was. Sometimes I miss things from being over here, but Doug, of course, I used to be vice chairman of the North Carolina Biotech Center board, and when Doug joined, and he's a fantastic leader, and I think he and his team have navigated the political debates within the state and have been able to, and I think the original vision by Dr. Hamner and that whole team way back when about focusing on the manufacturing and supply chain side of life sciences has really paid off for the state of North Carolina. So I wanted to bring up supply side because in the cell and gene therapy area, like our argenix and the rare disease, the executive that's running the supply side and the use of Catalent and all these suppliers and making sure that you don't have vulnerabilities because you're in one site. You have to have redundancy, and you need people, so now we're long into a transition in the triad in the triad area away from tobacco, furniture, and textiles. But those skills, we always thought that those skills that were in the workforce then, with retraining, were going to be very valuable in the future. And I think a lot of that has been realized. And I know that the North Carolina Biotech Center shows up in Denmark on a regular basis because of that. Now, the last thing I'll leave everybody with is I remember Barbara Bush, the First Lady, giving a speech, and she talked about how important it is to work on something larger than yourself. And so that was happening about the time that I was developing out of the laboratory. And I think it's been the key to my career. It has been the fact that I have always focused on something larger than myself. And I think when you do that, it just gives you the determination and because it's important, right? And so when things always get hard at different times, and you have failures, and rather than you can't do much about what happened. What you can do is stay focused on what you believe is important in the world. So it's important to be real, authentic, and play yourself out. Be who you are. I did that. We built Targacep around soaring with your strengths and managing your weaknesses, so that we could get the benefit of that. Now that's hard to do because society and people put pressure on you, right? But please, as you're developing your career for SciTech programs around life sciences, I think you have a lot of opportunity of being who you are and following who you are as you make decisions.
Don, I think these are such valuable words, and I want to thank you today for coming on to SciTech. It's a 12-year absence. I know that you still come to Winston-Salem, and on behalf of the college, I do want to personally invite you to come to the college and see what the college has transformed to. And Sean, I want to thank you today for popping in there again and making this such a great production.
Thank you, Russ. I was happy to be a part of it. It's been a fascinating discussion.
Thank you, Sean. Really appreciate it. Very nice meeting you. And thanks, Russ, for reaching out to me and grabbing a hold of me. I'm really glad you got me to do this. It's just been a joy, actually, to kind of go back and think about all the things and to see how much progress has been made. You all can be very proud of the amount of progress in the Triad area, but also in the state of North Carolina.
Don, I want to say best wishes to Camilla and to the boys, and thank you for joining us from Frederiksberg, Denmark. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
All righty. See you guys later.